Hey guys, thank you so much for joining me. Today I bring you a video idea that really jumped the list due to all of the requests, all the questions about this product, and it is the new IT Cosmetics Superhero Eyeshadow Palette. And I've had this for a little while now. It was sent to me by IT Cosmetics, so I've been playing with it for a bit, and I have definitely had a chance to use every single shadow in this palette on my eyes. I have done some comparing to palettes from other brands and within IT Cosmetics' own brand. And I hope that this video will just be really informative to those of you who want to learn more about this product. But this palette is going to sell for $42 at Ulta stores. As far as the size and shape, here's a Lorac Pro palette. It has that very same kind of texture on the outside that I expect will catch a lot of smudges from product. And overall, you know, the bulk of the palette is this size, but a little bit larger with these kind of flared out tips at the end. And then when it opens up, at first I was noticing that it just kind of wants to shut right back down as soon as you open it. But if you're sitting this out like on a table or your countertop, you can kind of mess with it. And it takes a few times, but if you really bend it back, it will stay open for you. But there on the inside, you've got a big mirror. There's a little message from Jamie, who is the owner of this brand, and it says, "You're a real superhero." Actually, L'Oreal owns this brand now, but she's reaping some benefits from that, I am sure. Anyway, on the inside, taking a look at the eyeshadows, you have three distinct shades that are labeled Eye Foundation. It's kind of stamped into the shadow itself, Eye Foundation. So you've got Confidence, Pow, and Magical. Confidence and Pow are two matte shades, and then Magical is like a shimmery, kind of peachy pearly color. Down below, you've got three categories: Superhero Nudes, Superhero Neutrals, and Superhero Liners. All of the liner shades are matte, and all of the rest of the shades have varying levels of a pearly finish. Now, Limitless and Powerful just have a barely there kind of satin finish, but the rest, Aura, Unstoppable, Superstar, and Fearless, all go more towards a metallic, ultra shimmery finish. So all in all, we're looking at 12 eyeshadows in this palette. You've got 5 that are totally matte. That's these two on the top, these 3 liner shades on the side, and then the rest have at least a little bit of a shimmery finish. Now, the first thing I thought when I opened up this palette is Lorac Pro 1. And if you do look at those two side by side, I mean, there are so many similarities. The Pro 1 has long been one of my favorite eyeshadow palettes. Really, really basic shades going into a few little interesting pops, and there are 16 shades in that palette as opposed to the 12 shades in the IT Cosmetics. What really made me think Lorac Pro 1 were like these colors in here: the gold, the taupey shade, that kind of garnet red. Those 3 really made me think, wow, that's something I've seen before in my Lorac Pro 1. And to be honest with you, I'm not a huge fan of this palette. After using it now, after using every single shade on my eyes, not just swatching them out, I am not really sold on this. I do think it's a good quality palette. I mean, IT Cosmetics, I have believed for the longest time, has made great quality eyeshadow palettes. If you look at their Naturally Pretty all matte palettes, those are really, really good, and I've enjoyed those. I've definitely been on the bandwagon for those palettes. And even before IT Cosmetics really got on people's radar so much, they had a palette that looked like this, and it had, you know, a mix of matte and shimmer, and definitely some shades in here that I can identify in their new palette as well. I guess the question is this palette new and improved, and are they doing something, you know, above and beyond their other eyeshadows in this palette? And in a couple of senses, I do think yes. In these 2 eyeshadows up top here, the shades labeled Eye Foundation and Confidence and Pow, these are matte shades. One is a little bit cooler, one has a little bit more of a buttery, almost golden tone in it, and they are so soft and completely smooth and about as full coverage as I've ever seen a light eyeshadow color be. Now, for example, I've swatched Confidence side by side with the matte shade called Sheer Joy in the first Naturally Pretty palette, and to rub over those with my hand, which I would never really expect these to last, but the one from the Superhero palette really does have this added cling to the skin, and it's really impressive and very rare to see a light shade kind of hang on there even after I rub over it. And I feel like the same thing is happening with this shade in the middle here labeled Pow. You know, they are rich rich, intense, just very dense feeling eyeshadows, if that makes sense. I can tell there's a difference in that matte texture of those two shades compared to the matte texture in the Naturally Pretty palette. One little question though that I have about these eye foundation shades. I have a little guide to the palette here, and it takes you through several looks, and in every look you're advised to dust one of those eye foundation shades all over your lid and up to your brow bone as a base shade. And with those colors being so full coverage, you know, when I put them on my eyes, I almost feel like, wow, that's just a little bit light. You know, that first color is just a hair away from being totally white. It's not that you have to use them all in the way that they're advised, but for a much deeper skin tone, to put one of those shades all over their lid and cover the entire space up to the brow, would that even look right? Would that look remotely realistic? I almost feel like if they're going to market those colors in that way, maybe, you know, instead of making this one shimmery, they should have taken it down a notch and made it more of like just a slightly deeper medium shade or something like that. I don't know. Something I feel is missing from this palette in terms of mattes is something that's more of a mid-tone matte, because none of these shades over here are totally matte. At first I thought Limitless was going to be that soft crease color that I could use, and then I thought, no, it actually does catch the light. It's got some pearly sheen to it, and it just doesn't look quite right in my crease. And then I'm kind of reading the descriptions of the shadows, and it says that you can wear the Superhero Neutrals alone or as your contour crease color. That's these shades here. And you know, I can use Superstar in my crease. I used a little bit of that up into my crease today, and yeah, it can work. If you wanted to do a one shadow look with that, it could work. It would look okay. But I'm just a little surprised that there isn't something lighter than these options that's also matte that would be just perfect for the crease. They could have stuck it maybe in this section, or like I said, you got this shade up here that's kind of pearly. Give us, you know, a very basic mid-tone neutral matte. But you know, the palette's been made. I don't think anybody's going to go back changing it on my account, but that's just what I saw that was missing. As far as the mattes down here, you know, these liner shades, all of these shades definitely have an equivalent in the Naturally Pretty 1 palette. I've swatched each of those side by side with a shade from that palette, and they seem to feel exactly the same. They have the same intensity, the same look when they swatch, and that doesn't make them bad shades, because I do happen to really like those colors. But if you've already got this palette, there's 3 shades that you already own. I want to talk briefly about this little chunk of shadows right here. The ones labeled neutrals, and also this one called Aura. I have looked back in my first IT Cosmetics eyeshadow palette that I ever had, and this is a nice palette, a really nice formula. I'm not making any gripes really on the formula, but I feel like they took several shades out of this and kind of stuck them in this palette as well. I'm talking about Aura, Superstar, and Fearless. There are 3 very similar shades to those in this palette, with this kind of bronzy color, this taupe, and this sort of reddish shade here. They have a very similar, you know, soft creamy texture, which I like, but you know, those shades are similar. So if you already had this palette and you already had this palette, you've got a lot of what's happening in the Superhero palette covered, with the exception of, I think, these new and improved mattes that are up top. And I've said overall the quality of this palette doesn't disappoint me, but this Unstoppable shade, this gold right here, I have found this to be a little bit weak. You know, when I see gold, I expect gold. I like true gold. I like the gold from the Lorac Pro palette because it just shows up very true to color. This is kind of a yellowish shade, and I didn't think it had very good staying power on my lids, even on top of a primer. I did a couple looks with this, and I used it repeatedly because I was just a little surprised that it's lighter, it's a little more flaky, and not quite as good as some of the other things. The only other staying power concern that I have with this are the liner shades when actually used as a liner. So if you want to take a powder brush into that, go in here, or even a dampened powder brush, and then go across like your upper lash line, let's say, and use it as a little powder shadow liner. The staying power is not very good there, because I gave it a close check from, you know, I applied it in the morning, I checked it at lunchtime the other day, and I was like, wow, that's almost totally faded off. And I used the black and I laid it on pretty thick. So I wouldn't necessarily rely on those to literally be your liners. I want to take you through the look that I've got on my eyes today, and then just wrap up here and go over some final thoughts on this palette. But the way I did my look today, I went kind of cool toned with everything, and I first applied my Milani eyeshadow primer. As advised, I took took one of those eye foundation shades in the color Confidence and I patted that all over the lid and tried to use it a little more lightly as I went upward under the brow area so it wouldn't look too crazy stark up there. And then I patted the Superstar shade, which is a nice taupe. I patted that all over the lid and also wedged that up into my crease. I deepened things up with the matte black shade called Superhero, and again with the small shadow brush from Sonia Kashuk, kind of patted that on my outer corner, just worked that up into my crease. These shades do blend really easily. That's never been a complaint of mine with IT Cosmetics shadows. And then I was looking for something to just kind of transition out of these dark, cool colors, so I used Aura from the Nudes section of the palette, and I just lightly dusted that over the border of my look on the upper part of the eye. Then I went across my upper lash line with my Jordana Color Envy liquid liner in Black Envy, and on my lower inner rim I used my L'Oreal Silkissime liner in black, and I also smudged a little bit of that on my actual lower lash line. Then I took the Superhero shadow, the black matte shadow, again with an angled liner brush. That kind of helped me to perfect that wing as well, and then I smudged under the rest of the lower lash line with Superstar, that beautiful taupe color. Now I finished off the look by curling my lashes and applying this Superhero mascara sample, and I must say, really impressed with the Superhero mascara. Absolutely love this stuff. With one coat, it builds up thickness and length so fast. Like, it's really amazing how quickly it does it. And I still love my CoverGirl Supersizer because that'll get me there too. It'll get me to a volumized, thickened, lengthened place. But this does it so quickly. Now, I haven't tried it yet on the lower lashes. I'm still kind of in my comfort zone with my Clump Crusher water resistant there because I know that goes nowhere. But I will test the Superhero out in that capacity also. And then I applied, for some added drama, my Salon Perfect 615 lashes. Love just the whole cut and design of this set, and there's the finished look. So truly, looking at my finished eye, I don't have any complaints about the way this came together. The shadows were really easy to blend. I did use some of one of those eye foundation shades first on the look, and I do think it kind of helped everything blend really seamlessly on top of it. Now, I'm pretty careful when I dip a brush into these shades. I don't really, you know, go for broke when I'm sticking a brush in here. I very lightly tap into my shades, and that being said, I didn't see an issue with fallout. I'm truly not finding any like speckles on top of my cheek from these shades, and I went with, you know, some of the darkest shades possible with that black. I think the overall thought is this. This is a nice quality palette. They have done some things to improve the formula on a couple of these shades, and I already liked IT Cosmetics shadow formula. But for me, it's more of a question of uniqueness, and I feel safe in saying that this Lorac Pro 1 is probably one of the most talked about, one of the most loved eyeshadow palettes in the online beauty community, and probably even outside of that community, because it just is so beautifully basic. It's got all the colors you need and a few fun little shades that you didn't even know you needed. I truly feel like this is everything that this palette has, plus a little extra, because it's just, you know, a little added shade range. Here you've got like this deep plummy shade, which I love that color. You do have a couple of shades in here that are matte, medium shades that are just perfect in the crease when you don't want to go with your ultimate darkest colors there. Plus, I mean, you've got just a kick-ass gold in here. You've got this garnet shade. Pewter is a fabulous taupe. So those kinds of shades, you know, are kind of being attempted in this palette. The gold is not quite as good. And yes, these mattes up here are great. I can tell there's something different about them. They have that really nice cling to the skin, but a lot of the other things in that palette I can see coming from the Naturally Pretty, and several shades coming from like their first big eye palette ever. I'm not trying to trash the product, because I've said again and again, I think it's a good quality product. I just think, especially if you're trying not to overload yourself with different eyeshadow palettes, it's worth it to you to look to your own collection and say, okay, do I already have that Lorac Pro 1? Do I already have that IT Cosmetics Naturally Pretty palette? This may not be an essential thing to you. That Superhero mascara, though, I think I'm gonna be heading to Ulta pretty soon for the full size of that. That was a really nice mascara, and it held the curl well too. That's a big thing for me. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you soon in my next video. Bye.